Hi, today I'd like to talk about market equilibrium and externalities and what happens when we have externalities in the market and what that does to what would otherwise be the equilibrium in the market and how we think about that as being efficient or not. So when we have a market, we have people willing to sell a good to supply it, and that creates a supply curve for us that goes up. We have people willing to buy a good, that gives us a demand curve that slopes down. And so we look at where those supply and demand intersect, and that gives us our equilibrium. So we talked about that in chapter 3, and the equilibrium is the quantity and price at which the amount that producers want to sell and buyers want to buy is equal to each other. So the market clears. That's equilibrium. Now, we learned in chapter 3 that under certain conditions, well, actually we learned in chapter 4 that under certain conditions, the market equilibrium is actually efficient, which means we couldn't do any better by having people make a little bit more or make a little bit less, or consumers buy a little bit more or buy a little bit less. We're actually making just the right amount of stuff to maximize consumer welfare and producer welfare put together, which gives us social welfare. So the market equilibrium is efficient if certain conditions are met. Now, what is one of those big conditions? There can't be any externalities in the market for the market equilibrium to be the efficient one. So externalities are when one person's behavior affects another person in a way that that other person cares about. So those could be negative externalities. We think about there's a lot in environmental economics because pollution is a classic example of a negative externality. So if there's a Thai restaurant that makes delicious food that I love to eat, but that Thai restaurant has smells coming out of it that maybe a neighbor doesn't like, that smell going over to the neighbor would be a negative externality. Now there can also be positive externalities. Maybe there's a different neighbor who loves Thai food and the smell of Thai food is like perfume. For them, the smell coming from the Thai restaurant would be a positive externality because it's something that they're not deciding about, but it's affecting them. Well, when we have externalities, it changes things so that the market outcome on its own is no longer the efficient one. Now, why is that? Well, it's because let's think about the Thai restaurant creating a negative externality on a neighbor. If that's the case, then the market outcome will be me buying Thai food, the Thai restaurant producing it and selling it to me, but that neighbor is having that negative effect from the smell of Thai food drifting over all the time. No one is factoring that into the decision. I don't factor it in when I buy the Thai food, the restaurant doesn't factor it in when they make it. But the neighbor is less happy because this smell is coming over all the time because of that negative externality. From a social perspective, we should factor that in. So if we factor in that the neighbor is worse off because of the smell from the Thai restaurant, we actually want to scale back how much Thai food we make. They should make a little bit less at the restaurant. I should buy a little bit less as a consumer. The price will actually go up a little bit. And we see this by actually shifting one of the curves. So the cost curve that gives us the supply curve, the upward sloping one, that's reflecting the private costs for, in this case, the Thai restaurant. But if we factor in the costs that we're imposing through the negative externality, that actually shifts up the supply curve, or you can think of it as a separate supply curve on top of it. This one showing private supply, this one showing the social cost involved. So we take the private cost and we add the externalities, the negative ones. That gives us the social cost curve, which is higher than the private cost curve whenever we have negative externalities like pollution. So looking at that higher cost curve means our new equilibrium, if demand stays the same, even if I don't change how much Thai food I like to eat, we're going to say that from a socially efficient perspective, we should be making less Thai food and it should be at higher price. So that's how a negative externality affects a market equilibrium and whether it's efficient or not. If we have externalities, it changes the general outcome that the market outcome is efficient. Instead now, if we have a negative externality, the efficient outcome is actually to produce less and have a higher price in equilibrium. If we have positive externalities, it actually ends up doing the opposite thing. will want to make more of the good if we have positive externalities. So we'll talk about that a little bit more, but that's our quick lesson on externalities and market outcomes for today.